What happens when your daughter tells the world you're dying, only for you to rediscover a life more vibrant than ever? Martha's journey from whispered rumors to bold new beginnings stunned everyone. What happened next changed her family forever. Martha had never felt more alive than on the day her world shrank to a whisper. It began with a flurry of phone calls, old friends, distant cousins, even the postman asking about her health. "We heard the news," they said, voices hushed with sympathy. "How are you holding up?" Martha blinked in confusion, clutching the phone. She was 76, certainly, but still climbed her garden ladder, still walked to the market, still hosted weekly bridge nights. Her only concession to age was a pink pillbox for vitamins and a new hip that clicked on rainy days. She soon traced the rumor to her daughter, Janine. It started small. A neighbor overheard Janine at the pharmacy. "Mom's not doing well. The doctors aren't hopeful." The next day, Martha's church friends arrived with casseroles and prayer shawls. Someone sent flowers with a card, "God bless you in your final days." Bewildered but touched, Martha invited them in for tea, grateful for company even if she didn't quite understand why everyone looked at her as if she were a ghost. Martha confronted Janine that evening, catching her between work calls and laundry. Janine's eyes widened with practiced innocence. "Mom, people were worried. You were tired last week. You said your back hurt. I just told the truth." Martha frowned. "I'm not dying, Janine. I'm old, not expired." But Janine just sighed, as if Martha's insistence was yet another symptom. It wasn't just talk. Suddenly, the phone rang all day. Well-meaning friends brought soup, neighbors offered to mow her lawn, and the church's volunteer team painted her fence without asking. Martha's life became a swirl of sympathy, casseroles, and awkward visits. She was grateful, but also embarrassed. She wanted company for conversation, not a parade of mourners shuffling through her living room. It was as if she'd attended her own wake and been asked to make the coffee. But underneath the awkward kindness, something else simmered. Martha noticed Janine was always present when the offers came in. She'd say, "Oh, I'll help of course," and then mention how she was struggling to balance her own life with her mother's failing health. When a cousin offered financial help, Janine intercepted the check. When Martha's neighbor said she'd stop by to visit, Janine gave her the wrong time, arriving first herself and directing the conversation to all the things she was taking care of for her mother. At first, Martha tried to be grateful. She knew Janine's life was stressful, divorced, a single mom, struggling with bills. Maybe she needed sympathy. But it grew uncomfortable when Janine began managing Martha's appointments, telling doctors exaggerated stories of memory lapses and weakness, filling out paperwork just in case Martha needed extra help. One day, the director of the local senior center called Martha. "I wanted to confirm, you're going on the hospice wait list." Martha nearly dropped the phone. "Hospice? No, I'm not. Who told you that?" The director hesitated. "Your daughter said your time was short, and we should prepare the paperwork." Martha was speechless. She felt trapped, like her life had been rewritten by someone else's pen. Determined to reclaim her voice, Martha reached out to her old friends, Mabel from Bridge Club, Mrs. Lee from the market, Father O'Connor at church. "I'm not dying," she announced. "I don't know what Janine's been saying, but I'm fine. In fact, I think I'm ready for something new." The news spread quickly. The casserole stopped, but invitations to outings, classes, and even a ballroom dancing club arrived in their place. Martha accepted every one. She signed up for yoga at the community center, joined a painting class, and enrolled in a memoir-writing workshop. Each day brought new faces, new energy, and the joyful shock of possibilities. She found herself talking late into the night with fellow students, exchanging stories and laughter, and realizing how much of herself she'd set aside for the sake of family. Janine noticed the shift. She arrived one afternoon, arms full of legal pads and brochures for elder care planning, to find Martha out, learning to waltz with a retired postman named Arthur. Furious, Janine called Martha's friends and demanded to know her whereabouts. They smiled and told her, "Your mother's living her best life." Martha returned home that night, cheeks flushed, heart pounding with excitement and rebellion. She'd found her independence again, not as a last stand, but as a new beginning. With every new sunrise, Martha's world seemed to open further. She woke before dawn, lacing up her walking shoes and exploring hidden trails behind her neighborhood, marveling at how vibrant the world felt when nobody expected her to fade away. Her phone buzzed constantly, not with condolences, but with invites. A local author had asked her to join a book club, and the community choir needed new altos. Martha laughed, realizing that her last days might just be her best. Janine, meanwhile, grew more agitated as her mother's social calendar filled. One morning, Martha discovered Janine sitting on her porch, face pinched with worry. "Mom, I heard you're running around town. Are you sure you should be pushing yourself? You could have a fall. You know, if you need to rest." Martha cut her off with a pointed look. "I'm not an invalid, Janine. I'm living, not dying. Why do you want everyone to think I'm on my way out?" Janine flushed and looked away, muttering about wanting to make sure Martha had help, just in case. The next day, Martha's bridge club friends staged an intervention of their own. Mabel and Mrs. Lee cornered her at the coffee shop. "You know Janine's telling everyone you're slipping," Mabel whispered. Mrs. Lee added, "My daughter works at the pharmacy. She says Janine's been picking up pamphlets on palliative care." Martha rolled her eyes. "Well, she's going to have to find someone else to worry about." Determined to reclaim her image, Martha decided to make her new life as public as possible. She posted photos from her yoga class and memoir writing group on Facebook, tagging every friend she'd made. She even uploaded a short video, her first attempt at salsa dancing, laughing as she nearly tripped over her own feet. The comments rolled in, "You look amazing. So proud of you. Can I come next time?" Her social media presence exploded. Friends began reaching out, eager for lessons or company. The community center invited her to host a Living Fully After 70 roundtable. The local newspaper sent a reporter to interview her for an article about active seniors redefining retirement. The photos showed Martha, bright-eyed and grinning, arm in arm with Arthur the postman, surrounded by canvases and music sheets. Janine was livid. "Mother, you're embarrassing yourself," she hissed over the phone. "Everyone thinks you're having a midlife crisis, except you're too old for that." Martha just chuckled. "If it's a crisis, it's the best one I've ever had." But the conflict deepened at home. Janine began dropping by unannounced, inspecting the fridge for healthy food, and reorganizing Martha's medication box. She grilled Martha's friends, asking about her episodes, and warning them to call if Martha became confused. She pestered Dr. Klein for new prescriptions, insisting Martha wasn't herself lately. Dr. Klein, however, saw through the charade. He offered Martha a clean bill of health and told Janine bluntly, "Your mother is sharper than most of my patients 20 years younger." Martha felt a mixture of fury and heartbreak. She knew Janine's meddling was rooted in fear, maybe even loneliness, but it hurt to be treated like a shadow of herself. One evening, after another fraught phone call, Martha sat down and wrote a long letter to Janine. She poured out everything, her gratitude for Janine's care, her pain at being erased, her determination to write her own story. She didn't mail the letter, but she read it aloud to her friends at writing class. The group listened in silence, then applauded. Arthur squeezed her hand. "You're not alone, Martha. A lot of us have had to wrestle our lives back from well-meaning kids." Inspired, Martha proposed a new idea at the next roundtable, a support group for seniors seeking independence from overbearing family. Dozens signed up. They met weekly at the library, swapping stories, strategies, and even legal advice. Martha's home filled with laughter, not pity, and her calendar grew even more crowded with events. As spring unfolded, Martha felt herself growing stronger, physically and emotionally. She started leading hikes for the walking club and signed up for a trip to the coast with her art group. Invitations to weddings, concerts, and gallery openings arrived, and Martha accepted each one with delight. Her life, once confined by whispers of decline, now pulsed with purpose. She wondered how she had ever let herself believe the lie that she was finished. At sunset, Martha sat on her porch, sipping tea and listening to the sounds of a world she'd nearly lost. She watched a pair of teenagers skateboarding down the street, their joy infectious. Smiling, she resolved to keep saying yes to every adventure, every friendship, every chance to be seen, not as someone's fading parent, but as a woman still unfolding. As Martha's world expanded, so too did her courage. She filled her days with activity, rarely home except to sleep and tend her flowers. The once quiet house now echoed with music from her painting classes, the lively chatter of memoir-writing friends, and the steady stream of phone calls from new acquaintances. Even the mailman noticed. "You're the busiest woman on the block, Mrs. Ashford," he teased, dropping off a stack of invitations and thank-you cards. The painting group became Martha's favorite escape. She was drawn to a bold style, using colors she'd never dared before: vermilion, cobalt, sunflower yellow. Arthur, who insisted he couldn't even draw a stick figure, came along and ended up painting whimsical landscapes, giddy with the freedom of creating for the sake of joy. Their instructor, a young artist named Lila, encouraged the group to sign up for the town's upcoming Art in the Park festival. Martha, emboldened by her new life, volunteered to help organize. At the first planning meeting, Martha met a whole new cast of characters: gardeners, musicians, writers, and retired schoolteachers, all eager to leave their mark on the community. Lila put Martha in charge of the welcome booth, trusting her warmth to set the tone for the entire event. Martha threw herself into the role, recruiting friends to bake cookies, print flyers, and design banners. The anticipation in town was electric. "Have you heard what Martha's up to now?" neighbors would whisper, half in disbelief and half in admiration. Meanwhile, Janine's efforts to regain control intensified. She called Lila to check up on her mother, questioning whether Martha was up to the task of festival organizer. She pestered Arthur for updates, casting suspicion on his motives. When Martha heard about these calls, she was mortified but also furious. She confronted Janine at the grocery store, voice steady but steely. "You can't keep calling people about me behind my back, Janine. I am not your patient. I am your mother. And I'm not helpless." Janine sputtered excuses, but Martha refused to let her daughter's anxiety slow her down. Instead, she wrote an op-ed for the local newspaper, "Aging Isn't Dying: How to Start a New Life After 70. The editor loved it, running it on the front page above a photo of Martha, smiling in her paint-splattered apron with a brush in hand. The response was overwhelming. Readers sent letters, shared their own stories, and stopped her in the street to thank her for giving them hope. The week of the festival arrived in a whirl of last-minute details. Martha was at the center of everything, coordinating musicians, hanging art, and even judging the pie-baking contest when the original judge called in sick. Arthur helped string lights in the trees, and Lila painted a giant mural with the kids from the summer camp. When the day finally came, the park was alive with color and laughter. Martha greeted every guest, remembering names, making introductions, and beaming with the quiet pride of someone who'd reclaimed her place in the world. That afternoon, Janine arrived, caught off guard by the crowds and the sheer joy radiating from her mother. She lingered at the edge of the welcome booth, uncertain. Martha spotted her and, rather than shrink away, called her over. "Janine, come meet everyone. We could use another judge for the pie contest." The other volunteers welcomed her, and for the first time in ages, Janine saw her mother not as a fragile burden, but as a vibrant leader, admired, trusted, and deeply alive. As evening fell and the last guests trickled out, Lila and Arthur helped Martha tidy the park. Lanterns glowed in the dusk, and the air buzzed with the excitement of a day well spent. Martha took a deep breath, overwhelmed by gratitude for the chance to begin again, to be seen not as someone fading, but as someone in full bloom. She walked home that night under a sky spangled with stars, her heart light, her mind spinning with new dreams. The success of Art in the Park rippled through the town for weeks. Martha's photo hung in the library's entryway, and local businesses donated a portion of their sales to fund future festivals. Martha found herself in demand, asked to lead workshops, give talks at the community college, and even help start a new senior arts initiative. The energy in her life was infectious, attracting people of all ages to her orbit. One Wednesday morning, Martha led her first watercolor class at the library. 10 women, 2 retired men, and a smattering of teenagers crowded around a long table, brushes poised, eager for guidance. Martha spoke of color and courage, of painting not for perfection but for joy. She moved through the group, encouraging each painter, quick with a joke or a story from her own adventures in reinvention. Arthur, always supportive, became her unofficial assistant, arranging supplies, refilling coffee, and sharing the secret of his lemon bars with anyone who'd listen. The class was a hit. The librarian asked Martha to make it a weekly event. The local paper featured a photo of Martha laughing with a cluster of young artists, her gray curls escaping her headband, her eyes shining. But with every new accomplishment, Janine's anxiety grew. She started stopping by Martha's house without calling, always with a new concern. Are you getting enough rest? Have you remembered your vitamins? Who's that man in your photos? Martha met her daughter's worry with patience but firm boundaries. Janine, I appreciate your care, but you can't live my life for me. Janine's frustration finally boiled over one evening. She showed up during a watercolor class, demanding Martha come home and get some rest. In front of the group, Martha stood tall. Janine, I am home. And I'm exactly where I want to be. The room fell silent, but the support from Martha's friends was palpable. Lila invited Janine to sit and join the lesson. Janine, flustered but softened by the group's welcome, awkwardly picked up a brush and dabbed at a blank canvas. That night, after the others had left, Janine lingered. She looked around at the artwork drying on tables, the laughter still echoing in the quiet. I just want you to be safe, Mom. I don't know who I am if I'm not taking care of you. Martha hugged her, holding her tight. I love you, Janine. But you have to let me live, too. You can still be my daughter, just not my keeper. The next day, Martha received an invitation from the town council. She was nominated for the Spirit of Renewal Award, given each year to someone who brought new energy and hope to the community. Her watercolor class planned a celebration, baking a lemon cake in her honor and decorating the library room with homemade banners. The recognition left Martha deeply moved, not because of the award itself, but because of the people around her who now felt like family. As summer drew on, Martha's home became a gathering place for neighbors, friends, and anyone seeking encouragement. Arthur's lemon bars became legendary, and Janine, slowly, warily, began to accept invitations to join them. She was quieter now, more observant, watching her mother with a mix of awe and uncertainty. One evening, Martha hosted a backyard dinner. The garden glowed with lanterns, laughter drifted into the night, and Arthur played old songs on his guitar. Janine sat beside her, listening. You're happy, Mom, she said quietly, almost as if surprised. Martha smiled, tears stinging her eyes. I am happier than I've been in years. That night, as Martha washed dishes with Lila and Arthur, she looked out over her blooming garden, the tables filled with friends old and new. She felt something she hadn't in a long time. Pride, yes, but also belonging, possibility, and the exhilarating certainty that she had truly begun again. By late summer, Martha's life brimmed with so many activities that her days seemed to blur together in a colorful whirl. Her watercolor class at the library was waitlisted, with newcomers eager to learn not just painting, but the art of reinvention. She was invited to be a guest on a local radio show, where she talked about starting over after 70 and finding courage in unexpected places. Her story struck a chord with listeners. The station was flooded with calls and letters, many from people her age who were inspired to try something new for themselves. The Spirit of Renewal Award ceremony was held at the town square, and Martha was the guest of honor. She arrived on Arthur's arm, greeted by applause and the smiles of dozens of people she'd helped encourage. Lila gave a heartfelt introduction, praising Martha's ability to turn the page and her talent for lifting others along with her. When Martha stepped up to accept the award, she spoke not of her hardships, but of the joy and freedom she'd found in embracing a new chapter. It's never too late to start over, she told the crowd, her voice clear and strong. You're never done growing unless you choose to stop. The evening became a festival in its own right. Music, food, dancing under lanterns. Arthur pulled Martha onto the dance floor, and together they spun to the delight of the crowd. Janine watched from the sidelines, torn between pride and lingering worry. Eventually, Martha pulled her into the circle, and for the first time, mother and daughter laughed and danced together, the past momentarily forgotten in the swirl of lights and music. Martha's home continued to buzz with energy. She and her friends started a First Fridays open house, inviting neighbors to share their art, read their poems, or play music. The gatherings grew each month, drawing people of all ages. Janine, now a frequent visitor, found herself baking for the events, even painting a few tentative watercolors of her own. She'd begun to ask questions instead of giving orders, and sometimes she lingered after the parties, helping Martha tidy up, her guard slowly dropping. Arthur and Martha grew closer with each passing week. Their friendship deepened into something quietly romantic, a gentle hand held in the dark after a concert, a note tucked into Martha's bag, a secret smile exchanged over shared coffee. Lila, always observant, teased Martha mercilessly, but with affection. You're glowing, she said. That's not just watercolor, is it? At the same time, Martha's influence rippled outward. Several members of her support group began new ventures: a poetry night, a community garden, a walking club. The library started a Living Boldly lecture series, and Martha was invited to give the first talk. She told the story of her so-called decline and the lie her daughter had spread. She described the moment she chose to reclaim her life and the surprising happiness that followed. The audience rose to their feet at the end, many wiping away tears. Janine, sitting in the back, was moved by her mother's words. She saw for the first time not a woman to be pitied or managed, but someone vibrant and brave, someone who'd had the courage to rewrite her own story. After the talk, Janine hugged Martha tightly, apologizing for how much she'd let fear control her love. "I see you now, Mom," she whispered. "And I'm so proud." The next day, as Martha strolled through the park with Arthur, she reflected on the long, winding journey that had brought her to this place of joy. She was no longer living in the shadow of someone else's expectations. With each step, she claimed her future as her own, every moment bursting with color, laughter, and the promise of more adventures to come. The crisp air of early autumn brought new routines and celebrations to Martha's life. Her First Fridays became the talk of the town, drawing more guests than her little living room could hold. The gatherings spilled out into her garden, lanterns bobbing between the dahlias and chrysanthemums, laughter drifting through the open windows. Musicians jammed on the porch, and children darted between tables with paint-splattered hands, showing off their latest masterpieces. Martha's watercolor class, now so popular that there was a wait list for winter, met twice a week. She delighted in seeing her students, some as old as she was, others barely in their 20s, share techniques, encourage each other, and become friends outside of class. When Lila announced a group exhibit at the community center, Martha worked alongside her classmates to frame and hang every painting. On opening night, dozens turned out to admire the artwork. The mayor gave a short speech, and Martha found herself posing for photos with her arms around her friends, cheeks flushed with pride. Arthur, now a fixture in Martha's life, surprised her one Sunday with a day trip to the coast. They walked the rocky beaches, collected seashells, and laughed like teenagers when Arthur chased a flock of gulls. Over lunch in a small seaside cafe, Arthur reached across the table, his eyes bright. "I never expected to find someone like you at this stage in my life," he said quietly. Martha squeezed his hand, her heart full. "You make me feel like anything is possible, Arthur. Like I'm just getting started." Janine, meanwhile, found herself swept up in the tide of her mother's happiness. She continued to help with events, slowly letting go of her anxieties. She began to make friends among Martha's circle, sharing recipes and stories, even offering to drive friends to painting class or bring supplies. The old tension between mother and daughter eased, replaced by mutual respect, and, gradually, genuine companionship. As autumn leaves turned the streets to gold, Martha's memoir writing group celebrated the completion of their first anthology, a collection of essays titled Beginnings at Any Age. Martha contributed a piece called Starting Over in the Spotlight, tracing her journey from confusion and embarrassment to newfound confidence. The launch party was a raucous affair, complete with readings, music, and more lemon bars than anyone could eat. Martha's words struck a chord with everyone who heard them. She was invited to read at other clubs, bookshops, even at the local high school, where her candor and humor charmed the students. One young girl confided after her reading, "I hope I'm as brave as you when I'm old." Martha winked. "Don't wait, darling. Life's too short." The phone calls from concerned relatives dwindled, replaced with messages of congratulations and requests for advice. Martha's social calendar filled months in advance: gallery openings, day trips, poetry slams, dance nights with Arthur, and, always, the joyful bustle of First Fridays. Her home was alive with music and color, a beacon to anyone seeking hope or friendship. On a quiet evening, after another successful gathering, Martha sat in her garden, lanterns glowing softly around her. Arthur joined her, wrapping a blanket around their shoulders. "Do you ever wish things had happened differently?" he asked. Martha shook her head, eyes shining. "No. Every twist, every misunderstanding, brought me here. I wouldn't trade it for anything." She looked at the stars above and felt, for the first time in years, completely at home, in her life, in her choices, in her heart. November brought the first crisp mornings and a flurry of preparations for the town's annual harvest festival. Martha, brimming with energy, volunteered to coordinate the festival's news stories and songs tent, a project close to her heart. She invited members from her writing group, painting class, and anyone with a song, poem, or memory to share. The tent quickly became the festival's beating heart. Neighbors listened as children recited stories, elders shared tales of the past, and musicians filled the chilly air with folk tunes. Martha's name was everywhere, her photo in the festival program, her story retold in speeches and laughter. She moved through the crowd, greeting old friends and making new ones, never once feeling out of place. Janine was by her side, helping to organize performers, wrangle volunteers, and deliver coffee to chilly storytellers. She marveled at how much her mother was loved, and how much she herself was beginning to enjoy being part of Martha's world. During the festival, Martha's painting group unveiled a mural they'd created together, a vibrant scene of the town square, dotted with portraits of the people who made the community thrive. At the mural center was a figure unmistakably inspired by Martha, silver-haired, brush in hand, surrounded by a riot of color. The crowd burst into applause as the mural was revealed. Martha, for once, was speechless, her eyes misty as Lila pressed a bouquet into her hands. Arthur surprised Martha by organizing a dance beneath the festival tent, inviting her to waltz to a tune played by local musicians. They glided across the grass, laughter bubbling between them, as friends and strangers joined in. Janine watched, smiling, then joined the next song, swept up by a neighbor's invitation. As the festival wound down, Martha sat beside the mural, savoring the cool air and the distant sounds of celebration. Janine settled next to her, leaning her head on Martha's shoulder. "I never realized how much I was missing," Janine admitted softly. "You've built a life that's so full. I'm glad I finally see it." Martha took her daughter's hand, squeezing it gently. "It's never too late, Janine. We all get to start again. Sometimes it just takes a little nudge, and a lot of color." As winter neared, the warmth of festival memories lingered. Martha's house became the gathering place for planning holiday parties, crafting ornaments, and sharing potluck suppers. Her memoir group began another anthology, and she was asked to speak at a senior center in a neighboring town. At night, Martha often sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, her heart full to bursting. She saw the journey she and Janine had taken, one from misunderstanding and fear to trust, pride, and deep friendship. She knew now that her story wasn't ending, it was still being written, brighter and bolder than ever. The first snow arrived early, dusting rooftops and blanketing Martha's garden with a soft white hush. As the year drew to a close, her home glowed with warmth and welcome. Candles flickered in the windows, the scent of cinnamon drifted from the kitchen, and laughter spilled from every room. Sometimes friends gathered for poetry night, sometimes neighbors dropped in for tea, sometimes Janine and Arthur simply lingered, savoring the new sense of ease between them. Martha felt the richness of her days more keenly than ever. She finished the final chapters of her memoir, A New Beginning at 76, and presented a copy to each member of her writing group. The book became a small sensation at the library and sold out at the local bookstore. Readers wrote her heartfelt letters, young people inspired to chase their own dreams, older readers grateful for her honesty and courage. Janine, now her biggest cheerleader, helped organize a launch party at the library. The event overflowed with friends, family, and townspeople who wanted to celebrate Martha's story. Lila gave a moving introduction, speaking of how Martha had become a beacon for the whole community. Arthur, dapper in a bow tie, led a toast, "To Martha, who proves every day that life is what you make it, no matter your age, no matter the odds." After the speeches, music filled the room. Martha waltzed with Arthur, twirled with Janine, and shared slow dances with friends from every stage of her journey. The night sparkled with joy, old hurts forgotten, replaced by laughter, gratitude, and the promise of new adventures. As the weeks passed, Martha continued to fill her calendar. Another art exhibit, a guest spot on the radio, an invitation to help start a regional network for active seniors. Yet she still made time for the little things, a walk at dawn, coffee with Janine, evenings painting by lamplight while Arthur read beside her. The home she'd feared would become her waiting room became, instead, a crossroads of dreams, friendships, and possibility. One evening, after a dinner of homemade stew and fresh bread, Martha and Janine stood together at the kitchen sink, washing dishes and talking about the future. Janine smiled. "I'm glad you didn't listen to me, Mom. I'm glad you reminded me how much life there is left to live." Martha dried her hands, wrapping her arm around her daughter. "We saved each other, Janine. That's what family is for. Later that night, Martha sat by her window, watching snow fall softly on her quiet street. She picked up her journal and wrote, "I was supposed to be fading. Instead, I found a new beginning. I hope everyone who hears my story learns it's never too late to be seen, to be loved, or to begin again." She smiled, heart brimming with gratitude. Outside, the world was silent and new, just waiting for its next story.